I don't fear failure, but I do fear not giving it my all. Like that actually like terrifies me. That even like the challenges, even like the hard times, that these are gifts. And if you can find the good in that challenge, if you can find the opportunity in that challenge, there's always something. There's always something good in that struggle. I think proximity is power. And I think who you surround yourself by is so powerful. It broadens your horizons to what's possible. And literally within 8 months, went and created $700,000 or $800,000, and it was this crazy lesson that like.
All right, welcome back to the Quest for Success podcast, and thank you so much for tuning in once again. For those who are watching on YouTube, you might notice that we're actually in a different location, and that's because we are here at Harvard Business School over in Boston for Jam's graduation from OPM. And we thought, while we're here surrounded by some incredibly successful people, we'd sit down and have some conversations with them. And that's what we're doing here today with our special guest.
So we have a very special guest today. We have Casey Baugh, one of my cohorts from OPM program. Actually met Casey in 2017 when I was doing my very first Harvard course, launching new ventures up.
Yep.
Yeah. So Casey is amazing person. We wanted to know a bit more about Casey. Thank you so much for joining our podcast.
Honored to be a part of it. Yeah. Thanks for having me, guys.
So, Casey, this is the quest for success. And so to really start this conversation, we need to understand the core thing here, which is success. And so I want to understand, what does success mean to you?
So I think about this a lot. What is success and kind of how do you define it? And for me, there's not too many things that matter in life. There's a handful of things that I feel are like universal. And you've got like your body, like your physical health. You've got, for me, my marriage, but your relationship with your significant other. You've got your faith. You've got your career. You've got your finances. Your community, your family. So there's not too many things, that outside of like those core things. And so for me, it's trying to make sure that, I have a plan of what success looks like in those, that I'm living a deliberate life, that it's not, stuff isn't happening by chance, that there's a real plan. So for me, I try to model excellence. I try to find examples of people in those categories, and it's different models for different categories. Some people, for me, when I think about my marriage, I'm like, I want like a marriage with tons of intimacy and passion, and like that we love each other, and that like we, are excited to be together. Me and my wife have been married for 19 years. Wow. And, most marriages fail. Half of them fail. And the ones that don't, maybe they don't have passion, or they don't have that energy that you had when you got started. So it's like, who has that, and what do they do different? And so it's trying to like identify, hey, what is success? Your theme is the quest for success. And then it's, who embodies that, and then having these reference points, and then building a plan, to get that in my life. And so for me, it's, having that plan. Like, I want to have an unshakable financial foundation. That's really important to me. So having a plan on, how to make sure my family is financially independent. I want to have a career that, gives me a tremendous amount of meaning and purpose, that I feel like I'm building something that I'm, inspired by. And so, yeah, those to me are like.
Yeah. Can I say, is living with a purpose?
Yeah.
Is that how to summarize?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I think it's being deliberate or being purposeful.
Yeah, having a plan. I like that.
So Casey, in this podcast, as you know, this father-son podcast, like we don't have a real agenda, right? So apart from we are talking about success, it's just a casual conversation that we have
Great.
with our guests.
Yeah.
So we want to know a bit more about Casey, right? So please tell us what you do and who are you?
I think kind of going back to the beginning. I grew up in a small town in the U.S. in Utah, and one of 7 kids. The first time I ever flew on an airplane, I was 17 years old. So my life was pretty small. Played, sports growing up. Had a girlfriend, but like my life kind of revolved around an hour radius from my home. And then went on a church mission. So I'm Mormon or LDS, and so in our religion, you leave home for 2 years and you'll go you'll go serve. And so I went and I did that. I went to Oklahoma, and it was Spanish speaking in Oklahoma, so it was a Spanish speaking mission. So worked with a lot of immigrants that had came to the U.S. to work, and so that was like a very eye-opening experience for me to kind of step away from my little small town and probably limited thinking. Went back, and sports took me to like the bigger university in my state. I went to play baseball at Utah Valley University and ended up meeting my wife there. She's from Texas. And I never, so many people, they have financial support, and we just didn't. So like I was paying for school, and once I met my wife, the need to go provide financially got very relevant very fast. And so I went out and I started selling satellite systems door to door, so like Dish Network and DirecTV, and that started a career in an industry where I ended up doing that and doing well, and made, for me, I made $50,000, which at a 21-year-old, that was like $10 million. Like it was life-changing money.
Yeah.
Went from not having any skills to actually having a skill that I could go create capital. And it went from that to I learned how to manage and lead teams, and my income grew as I grew. And so I went to 200,000 from learning a couple more skills, and kind of felt this really great momentum. And this was in 2007, and the company that I was working with collapsed. And so I was young. I was, we're starting to invest capital. I felt like my career trajectory, I was having success that I didn't, ever really dream about having from a small town. And it all kind of came crashing down all at the same time, like within 3 or 4 months. And looking back, it was like the greatest gift that ever happened to me, because the potential of that company was just very limited.
Yep.
In the moment, it was the biggest thing that I ever could have dreamed of. But looking back, it's so obvious that opportunity was only going to be so big.
Yeah.
And because of the collapse, I was all of a sudden, I was a free agent. And so I looked at the world with fresh eyes, where just knowing myself, that's not how I am. Like, I'm very loyal. I'm like, I don't bounce around very much. I kind of get on a path and get going and just kind of build where I'm at. And I met a guy who's, top 2, 3 mentors in my life. He is the number one mentor in my life, a guy named Todd Peterson, who's a billionaire guy. He wasn't then, he was, but he was wealthy. And he owned a company in a similar space that they did smart home systems. So they did, home security, home automation, cameras, thermostats, ended up solar, internet. But one of their sales channel was a direct sales channel. And that was what I was good at. And so I started working at that company, and it was just an instant fit. And started making a lot of money and kind of having influence in the organization. And then I had a chance to buy equity in this company pretty young age, 25 years old.
Wow.
Was both given equity,
Yep.
kind of sweat equity, but also had a chance to purchase. And this was kind of, it's so funny looking back, like these moments. Sometimes ignorance is like your best friend. Like most of the time it's not. Most of the time it's a liability. But at that point, I had this concept that like investing was good. But that was about as
But
deep.
no one actually
that was
told you
no,
that.
that was about as deep as I could go. Was I need to invest.
Yeah.
And my boss came to me and he said, "Hey, one of the business partners, they're selling their equity." And I said, "Oh, could I buy some?" And he said, "Oh, let me find out." And Goldman Sachs was our partner at that point. So they got the approval for internal employees to buy out that equity, and it was a really good price. And so in my head, I'm like, I'm never going to see an opportunity like this ever again in my entire life.
Yeah.
25-year-old brain. And so I'm like, and I had $400,000. So that was my entire.
So how did you manage to save that much money for a 25-year-old?
in that world, if you're good, you just create a lot of capital. Like it's kind of, I made over $1 million a year, almost.
You non-stop selling
the
stuff.
second year all the way, till today in that same industry. And so you would go out and you'd work, and I didn't have a lot of expenses.
Yep.
So if I went and made $700,000 or $800,000 after taxes, I'd have like a lump sum, and I had just finished up my first summer, so I had like a nest egg. Mm-hmm. And so in my head, I said, "Yeah, I'll invest all of it."
Wow.
And
Wow.
looking back, it's like you probably wouldn't do that. And not only did I say I'll invest all of it, I'm like, how do I get leverage?
Yeah.
And so I went and I, talked to my boss and said, "Hey, would you lend me money to buy more equity?" And he did. And so he loaned me, I think it was $800,000.
Amazing.
Wow.
And I put in $400,000. And a couple years later, they sold to Blackstone for like $2 billion.
Holy
And so I just got this windfall of cash at a young age at, 27 or 28 years old.
Did you know what you were doing?
No, it was complete. Like I knew enough to say like, I think this is really good. I can feel the momentum in this company. I know that we're growing like crazy. The people that I respect most are really bullish on it. But there was no sophistication. Like
You had a good gut feeling.
yeah, which was all it was. Like I dropped out of college. I didn't have any finance background. I didn't have, any kind of quantitative skills to be able to really go properly underwrite a deal. And that's where kind of luck, when you talking to somebody who's a young person and said, "Yeah, you should take everything you've ever made and then lever it up 3 times and put it all in one company," it's probably a bad idea. But for me, it was this focused bet that ended up paying off, and that was kind of the foundation to go build my wealth and ultimately like start the career. And so I stayed with that company. They sold to Blackstone for $2 billion. And then ultimately we went and built it. So at the end, it was a $12 or $13 billion company. We built a solar company. We split it off and took that public on the New York Stock Exchange. We had an equipment company that we sold that, was all the smart home equipment. We ultimately ended up taking the smart home company public, and both of those ended up selling. One of them sold to a big energy company, a solar company in the U.S. called Sunrun. Vivint Solar ended up selling to Sunrun, and then Vivint Smart Home, which was kind of the parent company, after they went public, they sold to a big energy company called NRG down in Texas. And so that was kind of the end of that run. But along the way, it was interesting. I kind of had a windfall of cash, but my education was kind of the opposite of like how you would think about it. Like most people, it's you go get your undergrad and then you get your master's and then you go get the job and then and mine was drop out of school, made a bunch of money, and felt like I had like some real gaps in, my life. Like there was just some lessons that I hadn't received. And so for me, Harvard ended up filling those gaps. And so I started coming out here about a decade ago when I was just a little over 30 years old. And I did a program called PLD, or Program for Leadership Development, that was kind of a year-long, program similar to OPM, different cohort, more junior, more kind of high potential leaders at big organizations, less entrepreneurial than this program, but really great program. And it changed my life. Looking back, it 100% changed my life. And when you go back to that original question of success, I had this idea of like, I want to be a scholar. I want to, like, when I think about on my deathbed, I would love to, like, my grandma, she was like such a great example of continuous learning. Like, she died when she was 94 years old. She still had a little booklet that was underlined with, ideas and stuff she was learning. Like, she started learning the piano when she was 75.
Wow.
And like putting in work to go learn a new skill. And it was kind of one of those things where I said, I want that to be me. I want to be curious until I die. I want to be like a child. I want to, always be learning, never be kind of satisfied. And Harvard was a really good excuse to do that, because I could come out for a week or two a year and go do a focused program on a subject. And that's where we met originally, at the Launching New Ventures. But over the course of 10 years, I've done basically everything they've offered. So all their strategy courses and all their negotiation courses, their private equity, their entrepreneurial courses, their marketing, their finance. And then, a couple years ago, I liked that PLD program enough. I said, and I was in more of an entrepreneur. We started a private equity company, me and a partner, and said this would be a great excuse to kind of work on my business and go meet new people, but have like an excuse once a year to separate and to go study inspiring stuff and, apply that. And so that's kind of been what OPM is. And so as we're, getting to the end of that, you look back and you just say, you always kind of say, like, man, this was life changing. What would life have been without this?
How did I survive before
this?
this?
It's that kind of curse of knowledge where once you get something, it's hard to remember life without it. Anyway, so that's, a lot of my journey. I got married 19 years ago, got 5 kids. 3 biological kids, and then we adopted 2 boys, and so we have kind of 3 older kids, 16, 14, and 10, and then we have 2 younger kids, 5 and 3. And so that's life right now, is, trying to build a business, trying to be a good dad, be a, good husband.
Sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to jump on quickly and say a massive thank you for all of the support so far. But I also wanted to ask a favor of you guys. We want this podcast to reach as many people as possible so that we can share all of the incredible learnings that we've had so far. But in order for us to do that, we need to grow our following to beat the algorithms. But the good news is, however, there is one simple thing that you can do to help us reach that goal. So I ask you, if you could please follow or subscribe to us on whatever channel you're listening to this on. It'll help us grow the channel, which means we can get on bigger and better guests for you guys. And with that, back to the episode.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about your business. So what do you do? You said that you're...
So we kind of do the same thing that I've always done, which was, for me, it was always trying to hunt the best private investment options. That Vivint opportunity was life-changing for me. And Utah specifically just has incredible opportunities. It's a very electric, entrepreneurial environment, ecosystem, a lot of college students. And so, I got access to really incredible real estate deals because I had a good friend that went to Columbia. He did his master's in real estate. And so I had access to deals that none of my friends had access to. And so I was always doing that all along the way, trying to go find the very best opportunities to go put private capital. And it kind of came together formally by accident. There was a aviation entrepreneur named David Neilman that he was the founder of JetBlue. He was the founder of Azul down in Brazil. He's a significant owner of TAP Air in Portugal. He sold his original company to Southwest Airlines. So he's just kind of this iconic aviation entrepreneur. And he was doing his 5th airline. And it was a very deliberate, innovative model where basically there's a technology change in airlines. There's a plane right now called the A220. It's an Airbus plane that flies, 300 to 400 miles further than a plane its size at 20 to 30% less cost. So you have a plane that can do longer routes for less money. Yeah. And so if you can do things that other planes can't do at a cost that they can't do them at, now you actually have a competitive advantage. You can do routes that they can't do at a cost that wouldn't be attractive for them to come in. So that was his thesis was, I'm going to go build this plane or this company off this strategy of low cost, high service, direct routes that no one else can do.
Yep.
And he was going to fund it with his own capital. And COVID hit. And the airline industry just imploded. You think about what was the feeling about airlines when, and I think they lost 90% of their market cap, all airlines during COVID. And so he lost, a lot of his net worth. It was tied up in JetBlue and Azul, and so he didn't have the capital to go fund this airline. He also didn't have the demand from the marketplace. Any other time, he would have had 30 people begging to give him money. He's a proven founder that's exited 4 companies on the public markets. He
knows what he's doing.
He's a dream. He's like any investor's dream. But there was this small window when he couldn't. And my business partner had a relationship with him and just asked, if he could go raise the capital. And we got permission. And so I was just a LP. I was just an investor. And my business partner, Dave, he went and he raised $50 million in 3 weeks.
Wow.
And we only had 25 million of space, and they had to send money back to everybody, so it was oversubscribed. Yeah. And that started Sandlot. And so my business partner came to me and said, hey, would you partner with me? And I saw Sandlot originally as an investment. I saw it as I put up the capital, hire the management team, and then I own a piece of the general partnership, and I can take part of the fees and carry. And I was like, we don't need to do too many deals for this to be a great outcome for me. And we did and literally my simple brain, I was like, if we did one more deal like that over the next 5 years, it'd be a great investment. And 2 months later, we did our second deal. We were investors in a local company called Divvy that they sold to Bill.com. Oh, yeah. And it was a really successful outcome. And then we did an oil and gas deal, and over the course of 12 months, we did 200+ million of equity. And it went from this idea, investment to my full-time job in 12 months. And so it was
amazing.
Yeah, but it was very, I don't have any formal finance training. My business partner does, but mine's more operational and entrepreneurial, and but the opportunity just emerged, and we kind of kept going, and it kept taking us down that road. And so we've done it for 4 years, and we've had a lot of success. We've raised and deployed, hundreds of millions of dollars, and have a large group of investors that invest with us, and it's been really fun. It's kind of doing the same thing we'd do anyway, which is go sift through a lot of deals to go find the deal that just all the lights are green, and then we invest our own capital, and then we raise money from other investors, and we make money the same way any other fund would make money. We make money in management fees and then carried interest.
Yeah.
So very like standard model. Anybody who invests in private deals is used to paying kind of your standard fees and your standard carry. And so we just kind of model what the industry charges and charge the same.
Given that you don't come from a finance background, is all of your knowledge around this from actually just doing it?
Yeah, doing it and then being a student. You know, like my experience with education is Tony Robbins. He talks about the ability, kind of the 3 steps of patterns. He says the most important thing is pattern recognition. So it's actually being able to look at, you know, something that's happening and identify a pattern that works, or success, if you will. So pattern recognition is number 1. And then pattern utilization is something separate. So like you looking at somebody who's fit and in shape, you still got to go put a plan to go get fit and in shape yourself. So there's one thing to recognize, I really like those results in that person's life. But the second one is, I like those results. I'm going to learn their habits, and I'm going to model those same habits to go get those same results. And then the third step, it's pattern creation. And when you've spent a lot of time in your industry and you kind of have achieved mastery in your industry, that's where the pattern creation comes in. You think about great musicians that go create their own music, or great athletes that go create, you know, their own plays, or you think about great business people. And, you know, so for me, that same blueprint, any industry that I go into, it's find the people who are the best at it, go sit down, go interview them. So that's the pattern, you know, the pattern recognition, identifying those habits and trying to like build a plan or put habits and rituals so that I can go get on that same track. And then over time you realize, like, I spent my whole life in this career and I learned all these things, and there's those things in this industry don't really exist. But if I combine this thing and this thing,
I can go beyond.
There's a new industry and there's a new space and that's kind of our customer. It's not the pensions or endowments or foundations, which are traditional sources of capital for private equity. It's ultra high net worths and family offices. So it's one layer down, and these high net worths and these family offices, most of these are first generation entrepreneurs that have exited businesses. And so they're used to making capital allocation decisions. They've done it in their own business. You have an opportunity, it pops up. You make a decision to go invest in that opportunity to go help your business. And so this is just another one of those things. And so we've found that if we can go target that customer and provide value to that customer. And so like our value proposition to that individual is access to a direct deal that's underwritten that they wouldn't have access to. That's the value proposition. The value proposition to the founder, the person that we're giving capital, is that we're reliable, friendly capital, that we're like a great partner. We're a value-added partner. And so it's finding that space in the market and so it allows us to be really flexible. It's figuring out, hey, as a founder, what does this founder need? Do they need secondary capital to get liquidity? Do they need growth capital to go grow their business? And we can go put, you know, customized, interesting structure to get a deal done. And then it's building out that thesis and taking it back to, you know, the people that we're working with.
Yeah.
And if they like what we like, then they can invest. And if they don't, they pass on it.
And what do you think is like the most important thing to you getting access to those deals? Because I think there's a lot of people out there to provide capital, but how do you get access to the best deals?
Our network is like I've lived in Utah and Utah County, this specific part, for a long time. So I just know everybody. And that job that I worked for specifically, over 100,000 kids, while they were going to college, would go sell door to door during the summer. It was a summer job. And they would go out and make money, and then they would go back to college. And for most of them, they weren't doing it as a career. They were doing it as a supplement to go pay for their school. And for some of them, they were doing it as a career. But you just end up meeting exceptional people over the course of 15 to 20 years. And so many of those people that were top percentile people selling ended up being top percentile people in their starting a business. And so those same people, they kind of come back and they're the business owners. So much of it is relationships.
Yeah.
So we've never used an investment bank on any deal that we've ever done. It's always word of mouth. It's referral. So all of it comes down to our network. And, there's a quote that says your net worth will be your network. And, that's the case for us. Our human capital is kind of our competitive advantage.
Yeah.
A lot of our investors we end up investing in deals, but they actually started investing in our deals. So there's this interesting ecosystem where that same person that exited a company and invested with us, they've invested in other companies and they know the founder and they start, so much of it's just networking and referrals.
Yeah. You touched on there that a lot of the best door-to-door salespeople came back as founders.
Yeah.
I want to know, from your perspective, what do you think it is about that type of sales that builds incredible founders?
Like all of the characteristics that make a great founder are the same characteristics that would make a good salesperson. That job, it's 100% commission. It's 100% variable. So by definition, it attracts somebody that's an entrepreneur, that is a risk taker. They'd rather they'd bet on themselves. It's like, I don't want to go take a salary job that has limited upside. I'd rather take a variable job that has unlimited upside. And then it also brings in another dynamic, which is in sales, you have a ratio of failure to success that is just disproportionately high. Too much failure, not too many successes. Mm-hmm. And if you have a tough time with failure, you're not going to make it as a salesperson. Because by definition, you've got to go fail 10 times to succeed one time. And if your feelings get hurt, or if you get down, or if you get discouraged because someone tells you no, you're signing up for a job that's going to make you very discouraged and make you very sad. Yep. And so you have to condition yourself to actually embrace failure. That, somebody saying no, they're not saying no to you, they're saying no to your offering. And taking the emotion out of it and understanding that I need to have 10 no's to get one yes, and being happy when you hear a no, because it's a step towards getting closer to a yes. And that's a learned behavior. It's not natural. But somebody that develops that resiliency, the same thing happens when you're a founder. Like, so many people tell you no when it comes to raising capital, when it comes to buying your products or services. You just deal with a tremendous amount of adversity. And that job trained me and trained so many people to have a lot of emotional muscle.
Did you think, Casey, you got that door-to-door sales, like, accepting no, you got it from that when you're doing your service?
Well, probably. Yeah, I think like this industry, specifically in the US, it's very Utah driven. It's not that there's not door-to-door companies, but the foundation, kind of a lot of these companies started in Utah, and they were by return missionaries that went out and sold, the gospel. They sold Jesus on their mission, and dealt with a lot of rejection, dealt with a lot of, it's hard. It's the weather, you're away from family. And so you develop, a lot of that.
Persistent.
Yeah, and it's not necessary, now some of our best programs weren't Mormon or weren't, LDS. They were from Florida, from Texas, kids that didn't have that same foundation and did really well with it. So it's not like it's not a requisite, but that's definitely where it started. And for me, it was very influential. I kind of had already had 2 years of experience.
Yep.
So the third year, my first year, was really, I was experienced versus just trying it out.
And I want to go like quite far back. Was there anything that you look at your parents and you think you've gotten something from them?
Of course. Yeah, my parents are like, I think I've got the best from both of them. So my mom, she's one of 14 kids.
Wow.
And she grew up in a family in Wyoming. So one of 14 kids. So imagine small 2,000 person town in Wyoming, like a remote town. So they just didn't have any extra. There was no surplus. So hard work was just required. Grew up on a ranch, grew up on a farm. And so from the day one, you worked. Like that was just what you did all the way up. And you were extremely thrifty and resourceful. And so my mom, she just taught us to work from a young age. And it was like, it was not optional. It was not, try it out if you'd like. It was like you have your jobs, you have your chores, and you do these things before you get freedom. And so I absolutely learned to work from my mom. And it was such a blessing. And my dad, he just had this ability to dream big. And he always believed in us. I remember my dad would give us, all the self-help books, the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and How to Win Friends and Influence People, and The Richest Man in Babylon, and The Magic of Thinking Big. And as a young age, and he would give us these books, and he would pay us to read these books. He'd pay us $100
Wow.
per book. And I was very money driven. So for me, I was reading all the books initially to go make money. And over time was reading them just because I fell in love with learning. But he, so my dad taught me to love and believe in people. And my mom taught me to work. And I think those two things have just served me so well as like foundational skills. And my mom probably didn't dream big enough, and my dad probably could have worked a little harder. And I kind of got what I feel is probably the best from both of them, where, a really hard worker, but also dream really big. And so, yeah, when you're saying like, what did you get from both of them? I got my foundations.
That's really, really powerful.
And a lot of lessons for what I didn't want, and I think that's one of the greatest things is as you get older and as you have kids, you realize like, we don't know what we're doing as a parent.
Yeah,
like you're like
you're learning every day.
There's no learner, you learn on the job, and my parents were learning on the job, and so there's so many things that they did great, but there's also other things they couldn't teach me. My parents couldn't teach me how to go start a business because they'd never started a business. They couldn't teach me how to, be financially independent. They scrapped and hustled their whole life, but
they need the value of thinking big, working hard.
Yeah, but they've been married for 50 years, so they could teach me how to like stay married. They could teach me these other values. And so it was trying to like take the best of what they did teach, but then also go find models in the world of people that had those other things that I desired. I remember I had a mentor at a really young age that he was the local business person and, extremely well off financially, had the ability to go make an impact on a really large scale in the community, had a lot of influence in the community. As kids, we would just live at their house because they had a really nice house. They could host us. I remember having these impressions of just saying, I want that in my life. I want to have a nice house that I can host my kids' friends, and that our home can be the place where they gather. And I want to be able to give to the community in a meaningful way and contribute. And it was from these models that I saw at a young age. And so if there's anything, it's just trying to be observant it's the same reason, the title of this podcast is that quest for success. It's so much of it is just paying attention to the traits and the outcomes that people have, and identifying, hey, I like that outcome. I like the results that person gets in this aspect of their life, and I'm gonna go learn about it and try to model it.
And you talked about the models in your life.
Yeah.
And I suppose you're kind of coming to the point where you're the model now.
Yeah.
What are you trying to model?
Kind of those same things. I think it's going back to the very original conversation, which is what is success? And for me, it's like finding those categories and achieving mastery in those categories. So like studying those over a lifetime. And so, in my profession, like I want to go be the best in the world at what I do and pursue that, but to be the best in the world, you think of an Olympic athlete and the amount of dedication and commitment and coaching and time to go be the best in the world. And it's a different level of commitment. So I want to put in that same commitment to my profession, at a minimum, to be the best that I can be. Take my potential to its limits. But then you also have your finances, which are different than your business. How many people do you know that make a lot of money and can't keep it or don't know what to do with it? They're scared of it. And so also want to be exceptional with my finances, to have mastery, to have an unshakable financial foundation. So it's putting in time and studying that. And then with my marriage as a dad, I can't think of like any bigger failure for me than to go like chase the world and go like have all the success in kind of the physical world and lose my family. Like that feels like just a major miss in time and priority. So it's trying to balance those two of saying I need to go spend the real time, effort, and energy to be a great dad and be a great husband. And it's an integrated life. It's not a work-life balance. It's life integration. It's finding. It's never going to be a perfect pie of like the right amount of time, but it is putting in real effort every week in all those categories. And same thing with my body. I'm like, how sad would it be to go like conquer the world and then die young because you didn't take care of your health and you don't actually have the ability to live like a active, vital life. And so it's trying to study longevity and vitality and, go live like a really, a life with a lot of energy and, the days that I'm here to be able to actually like go live them.
Yeah.
Anyway, so it's those things. So I think it's, trying to pursue the best of those things.
Yeah. Best of you.
Yeah, we get one life to live.
Absolutely.
And make the most of it. I think it's like don't want any regrets. Want to like leave it all on the field.
Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah, that's a good way to look at it.
Yeah.
And you touched on their family. I want to know, what has being a father taught you about yourself?
There's nothing better. And I had like this blessing of starting my family early and getting married early. And that's, it's probably cultural, like in our, in our culture, getting married early is just, it's more normal. And I got married early and it just, like we're out here at OPM and everybody's going to the club and everybody's partying. And I'm just like, I don't even know what that is. It's been so long since I went and did those things. And it's not good or bad. It's just that hasn't been my life.
That's not you. Yeah.
But there's also like a lot of time that you go spend doing those things. And, also like our religion has this interesting kind of code where you don't drink alcohol or smoke. And I think about like how much of a blessing that's been in my life of just saying like, this thing, it's just not in my life.
Yeah.
I'm going to drink soda or water. And it's a lot of nights that I wasn't drunk and I, wasn't up late, which led to a lot of mornings that I could actually wake up and be productive versus be hungover. And, so some of those things have just kind of served me really well, just having like some guardrails or some parameters. And I think people look at those things as negative. They look at those as restrictive. But for me, they haven't been restrictive. They've opened doors. They've actually allowed me to probably live a more full or a more rich life because of, just having some
advantage.
some rules. Some advantages, but going back to, being a dad, we had kids at a young age and it just changes everything. It changes the way that you see the world. My oldest daughter, she was diagnosed with autism, and you instantly see the world different. You see it through a different lens. We adopted our two sons and they're both African American, and you instantly see the world through a different lens. That so many of those things you can't really know until you experience it. That like true empathy comes from having experienced it in a more meaningful way. I think that's the beauty of life is, experiencing. And I think we've talked about this, but you come out to Harvard and you just experience life in such a rich, meaningful way. You get to know these people from all over the world, all different religions, all different cultures, and you appreciate people more for just who they are and what they're about, and the energy and the
diversity.
The diversity. It's really beautiful, and you can't not leave changed. You just never see the world the same.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So it changes your perspective.
Yeah,
that's what you'd say.
Yeah, for the better, for sure.
And given that you didn't go to college, and you achieved such incredible things, do you want your kids to go to college?
Man, it's a really good question, because like if I look back, I'd probably say yes. Like I think there's some real things in college that I wish I would have got at a young age. Like, I would have got some more hardcore quantitative skills. I would have focused on coding, and I would have focused on accounting and finance and statistics and a lot of these things that I think, knowing what I was going to go into later, that would have been helpful. So I think, being a little bit more deliberate at a younger age and doing some of those things as foundational skills would have been helpful. And so if I was talking to my, kids and they wanted to be entrepreneurs, I would definitely push them in the direction of, accounting is the language of business. And so like go get a really strong accounting background and finance background and have these as foundational skills, to go build off of. But I think there's a lot of paths.
Yeah.
And I think if you go all in and do your best, I think about this Christian principle, the parable of the talents. And there's this story of the master, and the master gives these servants in the house, gives them different talents or gives them money, and like kind of gives them a charge to go be productive. And the one that he gives 2 talents goes and turns it into 4. And the one that he gives 5, he turns it into 10. And the one that he gives 1, that person gets scared. And he hides the talent. He digs a hole and he hides it because he's scared of losing it. When the master comes back and sees the servant that he gave 5 and he turned it into 10, the feedback is, well done, good and faithful servant. And he gives him more because he was good with the resources that he was given. And then the second one that had less but was still resourceful and doubled it, he's given more. And the one that had the least, he takes it away from that person and gives it to the other person that's more resourceful. And I never understood this. I remember reading this like scripture when I was young. I was like, that's kind of unfair. The person that only had one and they get it taken away, you should give them more because they don't, right? They don't have as much. And as you get older, and especially as you're a business owner, you think of that principle. It's like, you've got somebody that's the busiest person in your organization, but they just get stuff done. And what do you do to that person? You just keep giving them more because they're so resourceful. And it's like, you are a problem solver. You've got somebody that maybe is more junior, but they're really resourceful. What do you do to that person? You promote them. What about that person that has a very low role, but still just doesn't get anything done? You still need that job done. And so you fire them or put them in a corner and take that responsibility and give it to the person who's the busiest, because it's going to go get done. And so I think about that a lot as like a life principle of being resourceful. Yeah. And wherever you're at, whether you have one talent or two talents or five talents, you're out here and you're working with fourth, fifth, sixth generation families. Yeah. But these families, you were born into royalty. You were born and you had everything. And some of the people born into that scenario, they don't feel the urgency. And there's others, so many of our friends out here, they were born on third base, or they were born with all the resources, but they still go get after it and learn how to take it to the next level. And then there's, people like us, that didn't have too many to start with. Yeah. But it kind of doesn't matter where you start. What matters is, how resourceful you are with what you have. And if you're resourceful, you just keep growing it and it compounds. Yeah.
Do you think also that's also exposure that you have? Throughout the journey, you met few people that influence you.
I think so. Yeah, I think proximity is power. And I think who you surround yourself by is so powerful. It broadens your horizons to what's possible.
Throughout this experience at OPM, it's mind blowing for me. Came from similar background to you, with nothing, and hanging out with amazing bunch of people. The learnings that you have, and then the thinking, the conversation that I used to have with my friends is totally different to what we're having here.
Very different. Yeah.
It's that start make you thinking.
Yep.
That exposure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Take a long way, right?
Very different. Yeah.
Yeah. It's amazing.
And I want to move on to another thing that is a core part of what you do, which is case studies.
Yep.
Which is your podcast.
Yeah.
And honestly, it's one of the reasons that we actually started.
Fires me up. It gets me excited.
And so you were telling us earlier that it's been great for your development.
Yeah.
Talk us through that.
I think it goes back to that same theme that success leaves clues, and that everybody will give you advice, but you should probably only take advice from 1 or 2% of the people. If you really understand how success works, there's a principle, it's called the Pareto principle, that states that 80% of your results come from 20% of your actions. Mm-hmm. And there's the Pareto principle within the Pareto principle, which is the top 4% of people create 96% of the wealth. And so really who you need to be studying is that if there's 100 people, talk to 4 of them, and maybe 1. And so it's, out of everybody that will give you all this different advice, it's really paying attention. And so for me, it's, I want to go study success. I want to go study people that have real world results that I really admire, that are different than most, different than the masses, and to go understand how they think, their life philosophy, how they work. So that's what case studies has been, is just identifying people that I admire, that I really admire the way that they live their life. And it doesn't need to be economic success. It could be success in sports. It could be, contribution to the community. It could be great physical, accomplishments, but something that's exceptional. And really getting in and getting curious on what makes that person tick. And you just learn so much, as you listen, you realize like stuff doesn't just happen by accident, that there's principles, success principles, that if you like align your life with these things, that you'll get outcomes that other people don't get. But the most successful people get these outcomes. And so it's trying to just be a student of that. The other thing that the podcast has done is it's given me exposure to people that I probably wouldn't have had exposure to. It's an excuse to just say, hey, let's sit down and have a conversation. And the natural consequence when you get done is you become friends. And you have a more meaningful relationship than you did before you got started. And so that's what it's been for me. And it's something that I would do case studies if no one listened. I just do it for me. And I'm happy that people like it.
Yeah.
But that's not why I'm doing it. I'm doing it because I'm curious and I'm...
Yeah, I mean, again, Casey, like we don't even know sometimes, right? Like, these stories, when you're talking to someone, and this is a great example, going through your journey, your story, this even 10 people listen to it.
Yeah.
Right? If he can inspire one or two people, right? If they remember, if he can pick one or two things out of that discussion,
Yep.
I think we achieve our purpose,
Yep.
Like if we can inspire someone and motivate, like especially like people like Dylan, like young people just starting their life, and they need some inspiration, they
Yep.
need some guidance, right? So
I think about these Christian principles again. And Christ talks about like letting your light shine. And you put it up on a hill and you let it shine instead of like hiding it under a bushel. And I think a lot of it's just letting your light shine. It's, letting the world know what you're about and putting yourself out there. And sometimes it's a little scary because, the byproduct of that is people tear you down. Like that's just there's opposition in all things. There's gravity is real.
Yeah.
And, we had that case study today about like, the only fish that swims with the current is a dead fish.
yeah, that's it.
And if you're alive, you're going to be swimming to the side or upstream, and there's always going to be that resistance.
Yeah.
Unless you're dead.
Yeah,
But
that's
most
it.
people want to go with the current because it's, the safest. But like to actually go do something significant, you've got to swim upstream. But the podcast allows, you to. So for me, almost everybody that I interview, very few of them are public figures. Very few of them have books written, have like a active social platform. So they have tremendous success. But they...
In the shadows.
they're people in their community know about them and like people in their industry know about them, but they're not out promoting it. And so it's really fun to be able to like share those stories and put them out there where other people have access to them.
I mean, we enjoyed it, like, and not just your podcast, and you put a lot of posts on LinkedIn and social media as well, which is really inspiring. You inspire not just myself, Dylan, and many people, because
thank
there's
you.
so many great things that you're talking about 7 habits of highly effective people, which I really enjoy. I try to live my life with that
off that framework.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I told Dylan as well, all my family, I've given books for them to read as well, which is amazing. And you share that your experience with that framework, which is inspirational. And and also want to tell you, I asked few of our OPM cohort because they gave me feedback of our podcast and who should I interview. Most people say, "Hey, do Casey."
It's so fun.
This is gonna
That's
be
like
amazing.
like the greatest honor, especially with people that you really respect.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And there's so many people in this cohort that you really respect. They're exceptional, and all of them, like when you go to their hometown, they kind of have a kingdom. They're kind of like they have so much, success in their local community or their local town, and then they all show up here and everybody's successful.
Yeah.
And so it's a bit humbling because you come out here and you just realize, man, everywhere I look, there's people who are so exceptional and so successful. And so it is an honor to be able to like share, you know what I mean?
I think that's probably the most powerful thing for us doing this podcast is we get to learn so much just about our guests and ourselves, but then also just like getting the odd message here or there of
So
someone
fun.
saying, "Oh, this
Helped
guest
me
you
so
have-"
much. Yeah.
Like I never thought of something that way, and it's just all it takes is that one person.
But it's also like really great for your guests. And I don't know if you've experienced this, but like I get texts all the time from my guests that receive those messages. And it allows them to shine in a way that they probably wouldn't put themselves out there normally. They're not like just promoting themselves.
Yeah.
But it allows them to shine. And even the people closest to them are like, I never knew that about you.
Yeah,
You know, it makes sense why you
I think very much
do what
similar.
you do.
Yeah,
Why you're so driven. So I think it's so fun to see what you guys are doing. It's crazy how you're just stamping them out. You're just putting out so many high quality interviews.
Oh, we're walking in your shadows, Casey. Don't worry.
It's really great.
I want to. This is a bit of a different question. I've never asked someone this, but what's been one of the hardest moments in your life?
Oh, there's so many hard moments. The hard moments ultimately have ended up being the catalyst for the greatest moments. But in the moment, you didn't know that, and they were just really tough. I remember that first company that I worked for, that was a big crossroads in my life where the company went bankrupt. And I'd made good money for 3 years, which 3 years when you're 21, 22, 23 feels like an eternity. Feels like I've worked a whole career, which now looking back, like 3 years goes by in, you know, the snap of the fingers. But I'd worked for 3 years, had made, you know, a meaningful amount of capital in my life at that time. I'd invested it. I was building a home that in the U.S. market in 2007, like everything was growing. Like if you were building a house, it was going to be worth 20 to 30% more when you were done. Like the market was just white hot. And in the course of 2 or 3 months, all my investments went south. Lost all of them. My home, the housing market collapsed. And my home was worth, you know, 2/3 of the original value. So now I'm underwater on a loan. Like the construction loan was more than the actual house was worth. So there's like no way to like even get long-term financing. And then the company that I was working with went bankrupt. So I lost my job, I lost my investments, and like to like kick sand in your face, my boss, who was like my mentor, he was the person that I trusted the most at that point in my life. He was, think of like the person that's been the most helpful to you, and this was my boss. And he asked me for a loan of $100,000, which was my last dollars, and he stole my money.
Oh,
So literally in the course of 2 or 3 months, I went from what I felt was like on top of the world, building a dream home, working in a great career. I've got money that I made that's working for me, have a little bit of like a nest egg to, I don't have any of those things. Lost my job, lost my nest egg, lost my investments, gonna lose my home. And what should have been like bankruptcy was this like really insightful lesson on what's really valuable in the marketplace.
yeah.
And for me, what's really valuable in the marketplace was my skill set. Like I'd lost everything. I had no physical assets, but I knew how to sell, and I knew how to lead people, and I knew how to create value for customers. I knew how to get revenue. And I went and I applied those skills at another company that was a better company. And literally within 8 months, went and created $700,000 or $800,000. And it was this crazy lesson that like your things don't have value. Your human life value, your skill set, your ability to create value in the marketplace is ultimately like what's valuable or not. And when all these people were losing their jobs, I was in high demand because I could go create revenue. And ultimately it started me on another career that even the career of doing door-to-door sales, I never would have chose that career. Like my pride said, I'm better than this. This works this is beneath me. I want like the more prestigious work.
Yeah.
But because I hit rock bottom, any work was great. I was just grateful. And so it kind of like burned my boats. And so it was such a gift because I didn't do any of that. It just happened. But it gave me like so much drive and so much motivation that when I came into that new opportunity, I just sprinted past all of the established people that were there that were maybe more comfortable than me. So they had, more financial resources, but I had like this incredible resource of hunger and also gratitude for having a job that paid the bills. And I just treated it different. I treated it with more respect, like more reverence. And but that hard. I think about different times in our marriage. We had fertility issues where we just couldn't have kids. And that was such a hard time. We had 3 kids of our own, and then we just couldn't have them anymore. And it was, my wife, she really wanted to, continue with our family, couldn't do it. So we, all the medical things, we did IVF and IUI and, the different fertility things, they didn't work. And all the like ups and downs that come with that. But ultimately those led to us adopting our 2 kids. And you look back and you're like,
amazing.
What would have happened if we would have missed out on like this, rich part of our family that just wouldn't. And so I think trusting that life is happening for us. It's not happening to us. That even like the challenges, even like the hard times, that these are gifts. And if you can find the good in that challenge, if you can find the opportunity in that challenge, there's always something. There's always something good in that struggle. And it opens the doors.
That's awesome, Casey. Yeah, I think that's a real good advice for especially a young guy like Dylan.
Yeah.
It's
not if it's coming. It's when. Yeah, like that's just life is cyclical.
Yeah. And I think the thing from that is you bounce back because the one thing they can't take is your knowledge and your skills.
Yeah. And I think that's why there's this urgency to never stop learning.
Yeah.
And never stop investing in yourself and your skills, because ultimately no one can take that away.
And your attitude as well.
Yeah.
Always looking at that positive side.
100%. Like there's, where focus goes, energy flows. And when we spend, like where we direct our energy, you think about this idea of like the sun. And the sun is just shining. And we all get like this nice little, warmth from the sun. But if you take a magnifying glass and you put it out, that sun, when it hits that magnifying glass, it focuses it. And the energy that comes from that focus creates fire. It creates such a more, like it literally,
energy,
it can create fire where that sun was there.
Yeah.
It just didn't have that focusing mechanism. And I think that principle applies with anything that we do. Like resources are never the problem. Like you, Dylan, have so many more resources than you had growing up.
Absolutely.
So resources are never the problem.
Yeah.
It's the lack of resourcefulness. It's the lack of taking those resources and organizing them and putting them to work. And so all of us have friends that had twice as many, 10 times as many, 100 times as many resources as us, but they weren't resourceful, so they can't do anything with it. And then you have other friends that like had no reason to succeed, but they got really scrappy and really resourceful. And that's all entrepreneurship is Harvard's definition of entrepreneurship is the gap between what we want and the resources currently controlled. And that's what being an entrepreneur is. It's saying, I want to go there and I don't have the knowledge or I don't have the skills or I don't have the money. And I need to get resourceful. I need to go get the money or get the skills or get the knowledge or get the people. And that a great entrepreneur is very resourceful. They bring the resources together to go accomplish it. And people that aren't very resourceful, they're not going to be successful as an entrepreneur because there's always that gap. Regardless of anywhere you're at in that journey, you're never going to have enough money. You're never going to have enough skills. You're never going to have like the right people. Like you'll have them to get to a certain level, but that next level is going to require a whole different amount of capital, a whole different type of skills. And so I think it's, for me personally, I want to be crazy resourceful. I want to just be a person that is like insanely resourceful. That you just, if I have 1 penny that I could go trade out with somebody and get 2 pennies and then 4 and then like work trade myself into something better. And the people that I found that are really good entrepreneurs, they're insanely resourceful. And that's like the trait. Yeah. And passionate and driven.
Yeah.
Like you could have somebody with all the talent or all the skill that just doesn't work very hard and doesn't have much passion, and all that stuff kind of gets lost because you have to couple that with like insanely hard work.
Yeah. It's not about the dog in the fight. It's about the fight in the dog.
100%. Yeah. But you can have a dog that has a lot of fight that's fighting for the wrong stuff.
That's true.
You know what I mean? So it's this art of saying, all of us know people that work extremely hard and don't make a lot of money, work hard their whole life, but they're not very resourceful and they don't work very smart. We also know people who are extremely smart but don't get a lot done because they don't work very hard. And so it's trying to be like that mix of both, of always striving to get smarter, coupling that with just a lot of hours and trying to make up the difference. I always had that mentality, like specifically with sales, there was always salespeople who were just better than me. But I always felt like I had the advantage that I could work harder than them. And if sales is a numbers game, if it takes me 10 contacts to get a sale, and it takes somebody else 5 contacts to get a sale, I knew I can still sell more than that person. Mm-hmm. I'm just going to have to go talk to more than double what they're talking to if I want to, but I still can.
Yeah.
I don't need to be the best salesperson, but I can't cheat the law of large numbers. Mm-hmm. And so I think, anyway, having kind of those frameworks to think about things has been super productive for me.
Mm-hmm. If you had 30 seconds with your younger self, what would you say?
My mentor, I asked him this question, and his answers always really stuck with me. And this guy's a billionaire guy, insane entrepreneur, model of success for me. When I look at like, hey, what do I want to be when I grow up? It's so many of the things that this Todd Peterson, he embodies. But his answer to that question, which I would probably adopt as my answer, would be to dream bigger, faster. To like dream bigger at a younger age. And all of us have like these self-limiting beliefs.
Yep.
And you can only see as far as you can see.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes we're scared to fail, so we don't want to put ourselves out there. And I think just seeing a bigger horizon and going for it allows you to fail faster, learn more, and ultimately you're just going to get way further than, all of us. I think when we look at where we're at today, we're like, I never could have dreamed that I would be at this point. And so that would be my advice to a young me, is to dream bigger, faster.
That's amazing. Sometimes you have reasons not to dream big as well. You can actually dream big when you're young. Like I remember when I started my business, I was 30 plus. I didn't have any experience running business, and I had 2 little kids.
Yeah.
So I could go and, take everything, all risk that I could take. But then I was thinking, hey, I have these 2 little kids
Yeah.
I need to feed,
It's different.
right? It's so different. So this is why,
I always felt like that was my advantage.
Yeah.
And I don't know why I had that insight when I was young. But even when we lost everything, it was me and my wife.
yeah,
We kind of dust ourselves.
Yeah.
Like we never there was never a meal that we missed ever. So like as bad as it wasn't that bad. Like we kind of picked ourselves up. I think I would have thought about that different and had a different level of stress if I was 15 years older and had 5 kids. The consequence
Yes.
of like taking some of those risks is just higher.
yeah, yeah,
And so I think there is some wisdom in that saying
yeah.
earlier on, you can kind of, what do you have to
Oh, yeah,
lose?
nothing to
Start
lose, yeah.
over, you know?
yeah,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
true.
Yeah.
And so, Casey, looking back on your journey, where you are now, do you feel successful?
Yeah. But I've always felt successful. Like I think success is doing your best. And I don't have any regrets. Like I don't have a single regret. And I can say that because I've always done my best. I've just given it my all. And so I haven't sat around being like, oh man, I wish I would have worked harder. I wish I would have. I've just always kind of like done my best. And so for me, doing your best is success. And so I'd say I've always been successful every step of the way. You know,
Amazing.
yeah. So I don't have any regrets. And I would say, yeah, today I'm successful, but I was successful when I was 21 or 22 or 25 or 28. Like I've always been successful because I've just done the best that I can. And I don't know what else you can do. There's a book that I read that really influenced me. And it was by this coach named John Wooden, legendary basketball coach in the U.S. And won, you know, a bunch of national championships. I don't know how many he won. He was at UCLA. But that was his definition of success, was like that you did your absolute best that you can do.
Yeah.
So he had teams that didn't win championships that he felt were 100% successful because they got the most of their potential. And so I think that's, you know, for me, like, I don't fear failure, but I do fear not giving it my all. Yeah. Like that actually like terrifies me to look back and have regrets, to be on my deathbed and say, man, I wish I would have tried more. I wish I would have served more. I wish I'd have studied harder. I wish I would have, you know, and so I just don't want any of that. I don't want, like, if I love somebody and care about them, I don't want to leave any words unsaid. And if I've got music to play or I've got like ambitions, I want to go try them.
Yeah. I love that.
And that's kind of my mentality on life, is just don't wait to go try stuff down the road. You know, get out and get started and take action.
That's
and then
amazing.
and then fail fast and fail quick. You know,
Yeah.
like if you're off the right track, don't be scared to quit and just say, yep, tried that, didn't work, I'm going to go try something else. But I think if you just have this motor that's always moving, it's crazy how much you can get done.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so, Casey, throughout our conversation, I've been jotting down a few things, which I think, for me, from my perspective, have been the traits that have led to your successful life. So I want to share some. The first one, we heard it so many times, and it was continuous learning.
Yep.
Whether it's you're chasing another course, you're constantly reading, you spoke about all of the learnings that you got from people around you, whether it was your grandmother or a mentor. You're constantly pulling learnings out of situations and out of people. And I think that's something that we're seeing throughout our conversations as one of the core
Those traits, yeah.
Yep.
and I think you definitely embody that trait. The second one I got is you're extremely authentic. Throughout this conversation, you truly embodied who you are. You don't try and be someone else or follow the crowd. I think the great example is when you spoke about alcohol.
Yeah.
People around you, you know, they're going out partying. Some people would succumb to peer pressure, but for you, that's not who you are.
Yeah.
And so you live your authentic life and you share that with us today. And I'm really, really grateful for that. And I think authenticity and not trying to be someone else goes a long way, because you're not putting effort into putting on this mask.
Yeah.
You can just put all your effort into what you're actually trying to achieve. The other one I've got is you're very reflective, or maybe that's not the right word. You think very deeply about things. The pearls of wisdom that I've got today are actually incredible. Like I'm looking forward to cutting up this episode because there's so many just one-liners that you gave me, which I had to stop and think because there was just so much knowledge in some of the things that you shared, and it's clearly come from a lot of your own experiences and reflecting on those experiences to pull out what are the learnings. Okay, I might not have done what I wanted to. I might not have succeeded this time, but what can I take from this experience and go away? And then the last one is your glass half full attitude, your positivity. Whether it's, things have gone south, hey, I learned from it.
Yeah.
Or it's all part of the journey. And I think not reflecting on the negative things and trying to take the positives and know that it's all part of the journey.
So one, thank you for taking those notes because those are incredible insights. And even for me to hear those back, it's really great to hear those things. And I would just say touching on those things, like when you talk about authenticity, so much of authenticity is identity. Mm-hmm. And us really understanding who we are. And I think a lot of times we don't take the time to actually know who we are. And and we have some beliefs. All of us have an identity. But some of our identity doesn't serve us very well. You could have, been told by somebody when you're young that you're stupid or you're fat or you're not athletic or you're not good enough or tall enough or smart enough or whatever. And this becomes your identity. And if you haven't rooted that out, if you haven't fixed that software, it's going to be a limiting part because it kind of lives on that subconscious level. And so I actually spend a tremendous amount of time, a lot of time daily, meditating in the mornings, but then actually asking and answering the question of who am I? And having real answers to those things. And so I've never fully listed out hey, I don't drink alcohol. But I do list that I'm a disciple of Christ. And for me, that captures an ethos. It captures this is some of the things that I espouse to go do. And I'm not saying there's right or wrong. I'm saying this is a personal belief. But it allows me to operate without, I've decided a long time ago. So in the moment, I don't need to decide, and it's not hard for me because the decision happened a long time ago, and so you can show up and kind of celebrate people. That the other thing is that principle of optimism. I just don't know how you can succeed without it. And it's this interesting art. It's this interesting balance because you don't want to be Pollyanna. You don't want to be the one that's just running around saying, yeah, the sky's, green, the sky's green, and everybody's outside being you're in the clouds. Yeah. But also, if you look at people who change the world, they see a world that no one else sees, and they will it into existence. And going back to philosophy, my personal philosophical belief is that I'm a son of God, that we're children of God. That's a philosophical belief. Mm-hmm. But if we are children, if we have a divine kind of father or mother, if you're children of divinity, then that means that you have divinity inside of you. And God's purpose is to create. And I think our purpose is to create. It's to go create. And you think about the world that you live in, and it's a creation. You created it in your mind, and then you go out and you work in the physical world. And if you go dream bigger, you can go create something bigger. And if you dream small, you go create something smaller. But I think that, principle of creation just matters so much, to actually spend time dreaming and spend time, in entrepreneurship they call ideation, coming up with a lot of ideas, but really it's just dreaming. It's coming up and saying, I'm going to go create the world that I want to go live in. And most people don't. I'd say 99% of people don't. They go live in the world that someone else created. And all of us do that. All of us are like, if you look at all the stuff we have around us, this building somebody created this a long time ago. Somebody had this dream of executive education and this beautiful multi-$100 million building overlooking the Charles River. And they dreamed it up. And then they got the resources and the capital and put it together. And we're the beneficiaries of that dream.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so that to me kind of fires me up, that, all of us are driving on roads that we didn't create. All of us are on Wi-Fi that we didn't create. All of us are reading books that we didn't create. All of us, have tremendous resources that have never existed. And that, I don't know how you can't be optimistic with that, but like, if you're going through the world looking for problems, you will find problems.
Yeah.
What's wrong is always available, but so is what's right and what's good. And it's a choice to choose the good, to choose to go spend your time focusing on the things that move you towards, the life that you want to go live for you and your family.
Yeah. Casey, amazing. We could go
all night.
All night talking about it.
No.
And you already given us more than hour and a half.
No, thank you guys for hosting me.
And one thing about you, also you're such a generous guy. Anytime when you want to have a little chat, you're always available, and very short notice, you came onto our podcast, and very much appreciate it.
No, thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah.
Yep, we'll see you.
Thank you so much.
Cheers, Casey.
Yep, cheers. That was so good.
Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode. We had so much fun recording this episode with Casey. He is an incredible human being, and we learned so much from him. And we really hope that you guys learn a lot as well. And if you did, we have a simple ask of you. At the moment, we're trying to grow our YouTube channel. And so we'd really, really appreciate it if you head over to our channel, subscribe to it, and also share it around to your friends and family. It adds a different element being able to watch the show rather than just listen to it as well. And also, if you want to watch any of our previous episodes, you can head over to our website, thequestforsuccesspodcast.com, and you'll see the links to all of our content over there. We really hope you guys enjoyed this one, and we'll catch you guys next week.